What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from Zoom again, and this time we got round two with Brian of the almighty Diamond Head. Great to be able to talk with you. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. Yeah, good to see you too, Alex.
Yeah.
Again, yeah.
Yep, again. And this time video as well. It was audio last time. I do remember that. So,
Right, right,
yep.
right.
So now in the flesh.
In the flesh.
Yep. But we got Lighting to the Nations, the remastered, coming out now, and I know that we were talking about the re-recorded versions back the last time we spoke. And I've noticed a lot of great classic metal albums, being remastered or re-released, re-recorded. I think most recent example would be Dio's Holy Diver and whatever. And I consider Lighting to the
Uh-huh.
Nations to be just as classic as that would be. Going back though to the 1980s, do you think with remastering this and re-recording it that the songs have new meaning or new life into it than as opposed to back in 1980?
Well, of course, in 1980, it was only on vinyl. And of course, you can get a bit more out of things now with digital equipment and mastering. I think mastering's probably come on a long way. Everybody was only ever concerned about mastering to vinyl and making sure that the record didn't jump and it wasn't too loud and you'd scoop all the bass into the middle and things like that. Whereas when CDs came out, none of that mattered so much. Records got louder and things like that. And I think you can afford to add a little bit more and do more tweaking to older tapes than you could back then. So the sound's really good on this new new mastering of the original recording. Because of the equipment, I think, and people have just invented more and more equipment to do better jobs of mastering, and I think you can bring more life to the old recordings.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's a breath of fresh air for people who did have that album on vinyl back in 1980. And they're probably like saying, wait, you don't mean I don't have to flip it over to go from The Prince or Sucking My Love to Am I Evil? I could just go straight to it now? That's incredible.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, it has been released on CD, of course, over the years, but a lot of care's gone into this particular version. And we mastered from the original tapes. I had a U-matic version of the album that was done in 1993 at Porky's Mastering in London. So that was taken from the quarter-inch masters, and we listened to that, and that was very clear and very open sounding. So we used that for the finished product. That we haven't used that before, as far as I can remember. So it's the first time it's come from that particular source, and it does sound really good. I'm pleased with it.
Do you feel that, like, because I can't think of a classic metal album like Lighting to the Nations that really aged as well as it did. A lot of people rediscover that album thanks to the Big Four, and a lot of people, hear that solo. To this day, my generation hears that solo and want to, learn the guitar and stuff. Do you feel like the meaning or the sound or anything regarding to that album evolves over time as you evolved as an artist, or do you think that every album that Diamond Head has made is more or less a snapshot in time, just a representation of who you were in 1980?
I haven't really thought about it, but I would imagine that is the case, that they are a snapshot of the band, where it is at that moment, who's in the band, and you always try and write the best songs, make the best record you can within time frame and monetary limitations. But it's just amazing that this album that was recorded quickly, recorded and mixed in a week, has lasted so long and has got such a following, and people still have a real passion for this record that it's 42 years old now. It to my ears, doesn't sound too dated. It sounds like what it is, which is, four young guys just going for it in the studio. It was done very live, with everybody set up at once. The vocals, Sean singing along in a vocal booth, drums in another booth, and trying to get really everything down in one go. Of course, you overdub the lead vocal and you overdub guitar solos and stuff. But wherever possible, we would try and get a take and capture, our sort of live performance, our live energy.
And even to like with like the subject matter expressed on this album, like "Am I Evil" is a question people ask themselves even before they even know of Diamond Head. Like I can't, you have no idea on just how profound of a question that is that we ask ourselves. Do you I'm curious, I know like it is like cliche and some people don't like to know answer what the meaning of each song is, but when you look at Lighting to the Nations, was this like a self-portrait in a way, or were you looking very externally as a source of inspiration?
Well, I, of course, didn't write the lyrics.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course.
So I can only, work out what Sean is trying to say, and from various conversations. I think with a song like "Am I Evil," because it's such a big, powerful, heavy riff, Sean was quoted as saying he tried to come up with a lyric that was equally, powerful and dark to marry to that riff. So, I know part of the verse he's singing about John Wayne Gacy, the American serial killer, but he's also said parts of it are about the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. So I don't necessarily think he's talking about himself or any of us. It's probably more things he's read. He was a reader, and so he read a lot of books, and he would get ideas from magazines and comics and newspapers, and channel it all in a unique way into the lyrics.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And you mentioned like with the use of modern technology with the remastering of this, modern technology always helps. But you hear a lot of artists who, from your generation and before and after, who say, oh, modern technology is nothing like what the old days of analog was, and it doesn't have the warmth or all that. But it seems like you took full advantage of that, right? Was there specific new gear or new recording techniques that you discovered that
Yes.
Was incorporated as well?
Yes, I mean it's easy to get into the old recordings because they're classic, aren't they? And we love them. We grew up listening to them. Your AC/DC, your Deep Purple albums. But I think everybody would use Pro Tools or Logic or whatever it is now, because the editing is just so incredible compared to how it used to be with 2-inch tape. And I remember full well where you'd suddenly have an idea and you need to extend the verse, and you'd have to copy the tape. You'd have to go to another studio, make another copy. It would cost, hundreds of pounds, cut the tape, hope that the quality was exactly the same. And it was such an effort to do a tiny edit, whereas now you do it digitally in seconds and then undo if you don't like it. So I don't know. I'm not an audiophile to the degree where it has to be vinyl, and I think CDs are fine. I think you can cram more information onto a CD. Records get bigger and bigger, don't they? If you listen to modern metal records, there's so much going on. People, it's so easy to layer and put extra sonics in there that you couldn't possibly do back in the 70s.
Yeah.
So it's just moved on. Technology, amplifiers have moved on, speakers, microphones.
Yeah.
It's all moved on.
And you mentioned layering too. I know that if "Am I Evil" was written like today by another guitar player or something, somebody from my generation it was never heard, I can only imagine how many layers would be over that. There would probably be like a symphonic orchestra behind it, and that would be people's first interpretation of it.
It would, yeah, indeed. It would be, sunk almost in layers of guitars and drums and vocals.
Yeah.
Whereas this is just two guitars, a bass guitar and a drum set with a singer.
Yeah.
There's no backing vocals on it. There's a little bit on Sweet and Innocent, I believe, but I think that's the only song we even put backing vocals on, because partly we weren't very good at doing backing vocals, and partly time. We hadn't got a lot of time to start working out harmonies and things like that. Probably for the best.
Definitely for the best. I think time was on your side, but it's a
Yeah.
breath of fresh air to hear you like embrace the modern technology, because like I hear a lot of people complain it's not like what it used to be. It's not like what it used to be. I'm like, okay, so do you really want to cut tape for hours and hours and spend all that money again? Go ahead, have at it. I'll just do a quick little clip right here.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
And tape was very expensive, wasn't it? You know, a reel of Ampex 456 was about 110 quid back in the day.
Yeah.
So you end up with say 30 reels of tape, you know, and you're looking at thousands of pounds just in tape.
Yeah, I work in a musical retail, and we actually stumbled across like I would say maybe 10 or 20 like boxes of just Ampex tape, and we listed them online, and they were like all gone in like the course of a day. It was so like
Yeah, uh, I've still got quite a few that I've stored and kept over the years. But I mean, I'm not selling them. They do deteriorate over years, and so it's probably best not to play old tapes unless you're going to get them baked and things like that. And anyway, I mean, I don't have a machine.
yeah.
I can remember they used to have a Studer A800 in Battery, and I'm sure they said it was 60,000 quid. And that was in like 83 or something. So that was a phenomenal amount of money for just one tape machine. They probably had 3 of them as well, you know. The cost of having a studio years ago was so expensive.
I've seen a couple articles where they like write about classic albums. I think Appetite for Destruction was on there, maybe Master of Puppets,
Yeah.
I'm not sure. But like they were saying it was like an article on the most expensive albums it ever was, and you're just blown away by like how expensive some of the greatest classics in history was. That's why we still got to, and I'm glad people still appreciate it to this day.
Yeah.
They got the money's
I
worth.
think The Wall cost nearly a million, didn't it? The Wall, and I think Bruce Springsteen's album The River, I think that cost nearly £1 million, because it took him ages, didn't it? It took him about 18 months to make or something, and studio time's expensive, isn't it?
Yeah, but if you make a classic one hit on that, I think you can make it all up in the course of a year, right?
True.
Yep. Now, I feel like there's a lot this year in the Diamond Head camp alone to celebrate, because not only are we celebrating the anniversary of Lighting to the Nations, as you mentioned, with the remastering, but this year also marks 40 years of Borrowed Time. Next year marks 40 years of Canterbury. So, like, I kind of wanted to turn back the clock around that time. How would you say the songwriting or the evolution of Diamond Head was different from Borrowed Time to Canterbury as opposed to Lighting to the Nations?
Um, I always think the songs we wrote for the songs we wrote for Lightning to the Nations were written between 76 and, well, into 79, and then we recorded the album at the start of 1980. So we'd had 4 years to evolve and get everything ready for our debut. Then we'd got a few songs left over, but we'd written some new songs in 1980, which ended up being Borrowed Time, Heat of the Night, and Don't You Ever Leave Me. And I think we evolved quite quickly between Lightning to the Nations and Borrowed Time, and then quickly again into Canterbury. So I often think we were striving to be successful, because of course you've got to have money coming in to tour, haven't you? To especially tour, you know, fly over to the States and tour Europe and stuff with a tour bus and things like that. So because the first Lightning to the Nations album, we couldn't even get a record deal with it. I think we were constantly trying to write something that would sell and become successful, and we could all relax slightly, because the pressure was on to keep the band going and pay wages, and you know, we've got road crew and PAs and things like that. So we did evolve quite quickly during that time. I think it would have, in hindsight, of course, it would have been better if we'd stuck to a more heavy style. Whereas I think we were constantly experimenting, branching out, trying to write possibly a hit single, because everybody was doing Top of the Pops. All the rock bands were doing Top of the Pops. There was Black Sabbath did it, AC/DC, Iron Maiden, Whitesnake, Rainbow, UFO, etc. So of course you're under pressure. You've got to go on Top of the Pops. You're going to reach 7 million people in one, you know, with one song. So you've got to write a hit single, and we couldn't necessarily write a hit single, or it just wasn't right for us, you know. Um, so we tried going down that route, but it didn't particularly work out, and things started to unravel,
Well,
shall we say?
well, is that why there was a 10-year gap between Canterbury and Death in Progress? Because next year also
Yes.
marks 30 years of Death in Progress, which I feel like is a diamond. I feel like that's a pun intended, hidden gem, if you will, hidden diamond, if you will. So, like, what was the sort of mindset of Death in Progress? Because at this time, it was a 10-year gap between albums. And, you know, I
Yeah.
disagree with this whole statement, but they said metal was supposedly dead at that time. So, what was the kind of thought process of Death in Progress in 1993?
Okay, so that project began in 1990. Uh, Both Sean and I have done individual projects. I'd done a band called Radio Moscow, and I'd become a house engineer. Sean had done an album with Robin George called Notorious. Then we got back together via this contact, Pete Winkleman, who'd been looking after Sean, to do another Diamond Head album and we said we can get a publishing deal with Warner Chappell. So we started writing songs for that. That went into 91. We started touring. We did about 25 dates around the UK. We acquired a new drummer and bass player. Then that went into 1992. By this point, we'd written about 25 songs, and we were trying to get a deal with East West. But in the end, East West passed on the band, and we ended up signing to Castle. And the album didn't come out till June 1993. So we spent on and off 2.5 years making that record. And it was released because we managed to get the opening slot for the Metallica Milton Keynes Bowl gig in June 1993. So because of Lars, and our connection with Lars, he was instrumental in getting us onto that bill. So that became the perfect launch date for that record. And, we got a lot of press and exposure out of it. But by that time, again, the band was fracturing. Things were not comfortable in Camp Diamond Head. So,
But you still came back because we still got All Will Be Revealed and What's in Your Head,
yeah,
the self-titled. So
yeah,
it seems like you guys, it seems like you were never afraid to persevere. It always seemed like you were able to keep Diamond Head alive over the years, despite all the trials and
yeah.
tribulations.
Well, I suppose I realized I love Diamond Head, and I will do what I can to keep it going. I've heard people say your songs are your babies, so you want to keep them alive, you want to give them a future, you want to see them grow up. So rather than abandoning it all, like some past members have done, it's not for everyone. It's a long-term game. So not everybody's got the tenacity to stick with it and go through the good times and the bad times. So yeah, we continued with, as you say, All Will Be Revealed, What's in Your Head, and we've done the Diamond Head album 2016, then Coffin Train, and now here we are.
Yep.
We've done re-recorded Light into the Nations. We was working on another album, another new album. So I still enjoy it. We're off on tour with Saxon on Friday, all around Europe, all around the UK. So I enjoy it. I don't want it to stop.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Metal will always be alive. And to quote the great Lemmy Kilmister, "If you think you're too old to rock and roll, it means you probably are." So,
Yeah, it's great. It's great when it's great. It's great. There's nothing like it. The only thing that would stop me is health. If I became unable to play for one reason or another,
yeah.
I'd have to hang up the guitar. But until that happens, I'm going to keep going.
And let's hope it never does. And I think even like what's beautiful about heavy metal is, with the aggression, that even in the bad times, we have the same tool that brings us joy. We also have the same tool to unleash any of the anger and frustration that comes with it. And that led me to my final question, actually, because when I listen to your soloing and I listen to your riffs and all that's incorporated, there is an emotional element behind it. I feel an essence of true despair, but I also feel an essence of true victory. I feel like you have that ability. Is every solo that we're hearing in the Diamond Head catalog representative of an emotion that you were particularly feeling?
I don't know about that. I just think you're a craftsman and you learn your craft. It's always in the fingers, you can tell a guitarists apart because the way they play, the vibrato, the different techniques and the way you pick the strings. But we're not. What I'm always trying to do is just improve, maintain a level of technique by practicing. I try and practice every day. And I put everything I can into the solo. Sometimes they work out better than others. Sometimes the backing helps the solo. If you've just got to play over, say, one note, it can be quite challenging. But if you've got good chord structure to play over, it makes it easier. So it's a lot of things go into a guitar solo. I will normally record them at home and make demos and try and get them as good as I can before I go anywhere near the studio. But yeah, I mean, obviously it's got my emotion in it, but I who knows what we're thinking from one day to the next. I just trying to do something classic, really. We've all got our influences, people we look up to, and you try and, at least put your hat in the ring and say, this is my solo.
Well, it's funny to hear you say that because one of my favorite questions to ask any guitar player or just any musician in general is when you're working on something for a long period of time, like as what you did with Borrowed Time or Canterbury or even Lighting to the Nations, you were working on that for 4 years. I would always ask, is it harder to maintain that creative spark or that emotion that initially spawned the idea when you're working on something for a very long time? But it seems like for you, it's very easy for you to put things down to the side and come back to it later and not seem to lose the edge over it, right?
Definitely. I don't like to rush things. So yeah, we'll do a version and then we'll record it and do another version and I mean, I've said it before, Am I Evil took about a year to write. It would start with the riff, but you'd build onto it, you'd add sections and then you'd just one day have a brilliant idea and think, oh, what about if we do this? Sometimes you can wake up in the morning when your brain's particularly fresh, I think, and think, oh, let's do that. Let's try that. And make a little note or sing it into the phone or something. And I think they evolve over time. If you've got that luxury of having time to work on the songs, I think they will slowly find their place. There'll become a point where you can't do any more to it. It's achieved what it's going to achieve. And hopefully every time you play it fresh, it excites you or it does the right thing. It doesn't feel, oh, this isn't working.
Yeah. Well, and because some people say they want it to be as raw as possible, and for some genres or some songs that works, but and I think everybody's different. You said Am I Evil took a year. Welcome to the Jungle, which I think is just as classic of a song, it took 3 hours. So I think it really just depends on the artist. You have to factor a bunch of things. You have to factor in the artist, the inspiration that artist is feeling, the other band members, the studio, the setting. There's all these different factors that come into it.
Yes, that's right. Most of the Diamond Head songs would take a while. I don't think we wrote anything quickly. We used to write songs quickly back in the day, like 76, 77, but they weren't very good songs and they wouldn't last. We only got good by crafting the songs and by constantly recording them, little cassette recorder, bedroom recordings, garage recordings, and then critiquing our own material. But nothing came in 3 hours, nothing that was any good. Nothing like Welcome to the Jungle. I mean, that's a masterpiece. That I'd have thought that would have taken months to write.
Yeah.
But
who knows? Yeah, who definitely knows? I mean, and again, the music is technically impressive, and it's very difficult. If Diamond Head sounded like the Ramones or the Sex Pistols, and you told me it took 2 years to write one of those songs, I'd be like, really? Just a couple power chords in a way? But I think for a soloing like that, I think a year or whatever, I think whatever amount of time is needed is justified. So
I've got slower as I've got older. The songs take longer and longer.
Okay.
I have less ideas. Like one time I could come up with songs not songs, but riffs all day long. And you just, put them on cassette and pick all the best ones. But now I don't come up with so many, and I have to. I'm just as picky. So the quality control's still there, but it takes longer to amass, say, 10 songs or 12 songs.
Yeah, one of my personal favorite guitar players, Jeff Loomis, who plays with Arch Enemy but was also in Nevermore. He says he always has the record button on when he's practicing. Even like he could have like a terabyte worth of stuff that's just useless, but he always has the record button on because you never know.
I've never done that. That's probably a good idea, but I've never done that. I practice, and if I get a good idea, sometimes your fingers just fall on a riff, don't they? And just think, oh, that's good,
Yeah.
and just quickly tape it, and then move on. But I couldn't be bothered to listen back to hours and hours of practicing.
Yeah, well, you never know. Maybe going back to modern technology, give it a try one day.
You never know.
Yeah. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time and for another great discussion. Is there just anything else with Diamond Head that you would like to promote? You said you have a tour coming up very soon. Is there just anything else?
It is. Yeah, it's the Saxon tour starts on Friday or Saturday. I think we leave on Friday. We're off to Germany. We do KIT, which is Keep It True, and then it's all across Europe. It's about 15 dates in Europe, then back to the UK, and it's about 15 dates in the UK, but not coming over to the States just yet. So hopefully, we've just been to Brazil for the first time. I mean, that was great. Never been before, so a real adventure for us. We're all excited to go and check out the culture and meet some new people and stuff. So, and they were very keen. We they were singing along. Some people were holding up album covers and things like that in the audience. And it was a mosh pit going, and yeah, it was great. It was really worth doing. We'd like to go back and do some more dates. Maybe next year. Who knows?
I call Brazil the humid Sweden because of how much metal that's down there. So,
okay.
Yeah. But thank you so much, everybody. We are here with Diamond Head, Lighting to the Nations. It is remastered. Check it out if you haven't already. It is a classic from 1980 brought here in 2022. We will see you next time on Heavy New York.